welcome to episode 1 of inCHOIRing Minds. Today's episode is going to be surrounding establishing relationships with students. This seems like such a basic concept. Everybody learns it. But so many of us spend so much time wondering why our classroom management isn't under control or why we're not able to retain students. I'm so excited to welcome our guest today. He's a fantastic teacher and an all-around role model when it comes to just being a musician and a person. My longtime friend, colleague, and an inspiration to me as a musician and as a teacher. Please help me welcome Spencer Wiley.
Hey, what's going on, Cody? How you doing, man? Long time no talk to.
I know, living the dream over here. I'm staying in my apartment and not doing anything else.
Well, I am here in Killeen. Really haven't been doing anything except for, playing a whole lot of video games. I'm not even gonna lie, and watching a lot of TV. So yeah, it's been great.
I love it. I honestly think that I've watched the entire Netflix, all of it, like the whole thing. And I keep like asking people for recommendations and stuff to like, what's a new show you're watching? And they'll tell me this like 7 shows that I've already watched, all of them. And
right. Well, and I'm, like I said, I'm the exact opposite. My husband is a huge video gamer. And has been since we've met. And, a lot of times I do that when I don't have anything with work to do. And so since I really haven't had that much to do, I've been playing, pulling good like 8-9 hours sitting in front of a TV. So, yeah.
You go to the doctor and get your eyes
It's a hard life I live. Yeah, for real.
Well, I guess eventually we have to like talk about choral stuff. And
I guess that's why we're here, yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about where you are in your career and where you're teaching. And I know a lot about you, but people don't. So
right.
Tell me about your school, tell me about your job, and yeah.
Well, I am currently the head choir director at Harker Heights High School, which is in the Central Texas area. I just finished actually my first year there. For that, I spent the other part of my career in Leander ISD, which is one of the suburbs of Austin. I was the head choir director at Leander High School for about 5.5, 6 years. Pretty much the majority of my career has been in Leander. I was an assistant there at Rouse High School, and not only did I do choir things, I also did private voice lessons and so on and so forth. I decided between teaching middle school and high school that I needed a little bit of a break. Shout out to all the middle school teachers out there. You guys are amazing. You make our job so much easier. I just knew that after teaching middle school for 3 years, my time had come to move on. And so I decided to go off to Texas State and get my master's degree in music education with the core emphasis. What's interesting about me coming back to the Killeen area is this is actually kind of where I grew up. I'm a military brat. My dad was in the military, so I actually went to Copper Cove High School, which is only about 15 miles away from where I live right now. So being here is kind of an interesting situation in that it was a little bit of a homecoming. Where I'm at in my career, I'm about to turn 38 this year. And so I guess I've had about 16 years experience. Still consider myself to be a newbie, but I've got a little bit of experience under my belt. I've gone through a lot. I've been through a bunch of different schools, had the awesome opportunity to be a clinician for, several different middle school choirs around the state. And I kind of got a broad perspective to what this choral music thing is here in Texas. I love what I do, man. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm really, really happy the fact that you asked me to do this. I'm not normally one I'm not a big social media person. And I think this is a really great opportunity for me to kind of get into that. I definitely know that in the next part of that is definitely something that I'm really interested in being more visible, making sure that I can be of a service to more folks as opposed to just being here in the Killeen area. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, man.
I am too. What people don't know about you and I is that we've known each other since our senior years in high school. And that we met actually in the all region choir, and like
and we're roommates in college.
We've known each other at every level of our lives almost, and there's a reason why I asked you to do this, because we have so many great conversations during the summer at the pool or whatever that we go to, and I felt like there was a reason why some of those conversations have happened in our lives, and that I think a lot of people could hopefully benefit from hearing some of the crazy things that we talk about at times. Because there's been many times in my life where you've said something to me and I've been like, I've never thought about that. You know what I mean? And I know we've talked about times where I've said, well, I do this with that same exercise, but I do this. And you've been like, oh, that's a good idea. I think they're in this time in the world right now, and none of us got to go to UIL almost. And a lot of younger teachers didn't get that really formative experience at the end of the year to sort of cap off their first year or their second year, or their third year or 15th year. And we need that as teachers. And I hope that these conversations can help to fill that gap.
Right. Well, it's really interesting. Anytime we go to Team EA, I think it's when we normally have our best conversations, over a cocktail, which, cheers. A lot of times, one of the greatest things about going to convention is those moments and having that dialogue with your peers and your colleagues. I feel like you learn just as much, if not more, when you have an opportunity just to dialogue and just to go back and forth, as opposed to being taught at, just kind of learning from each other and learning, this is what I would do in this situation, and this is what I would do in this situation. Let's kind of come to a consensus and let's try to put that in place in the following year. So I think what you're doing right now is awesome. I think people are really going to get a lot from it. And if nothing else, hopefully we can be a little entertaining as we go.
Well, I've never been called that.
Boy, please. What? Anybody who knows Cody Parrott knows that he is a riot. So entertaining, you very much are entertaining. I don't even play.
Well, let's chit chat. Let's talk. Let's get into it, little man.
Let's get into it.
Rule number one. What is rule number one in Spencer Wiley's choir
room? Rule number one in Spencer Wiley's choir room. I think that my number one job is to provide kids and adolescents an opportunity to express themselves musically, both when they're in my program and whatever they decide to do when they leave. I want to prepare them for that. In order to do that, relationships are key. I think getting to know students and them getting to know you is absolutely imperative for us to do what we need to do. We are in the business of people. Yes, we are choir directors, and yes, we are musicians, but we are in the business of people. We don't figure out how to connect with our students on a base human level. There's no way that we're going to be able to truly figure out what we need to do as musicians. We do music not to get ones at UIL, not to get top all-staters, but we do music because it is an innate human need for us. Ever since the dawn of time, people have been getting together and fellowshipping and singing and chanting in unison, and that regardless of whatever happens with this unfortunate disease, that's kind of what we're dealing with right now, it's still a necessity, in a time where what are we going to do as choir directors moving forward? Nobody kind of knows what's going to happen in August. I think if we all keep the number one priority with understanding that singing and being a musician and choral music is a base human need. Relationships are so important. We're in the business of people.
Man, boy, come on.
It's true, man.
Clapping and stuff.
You can say amen if you want to. It's okay, bro. It's all right.
Anyway, so in building relationships and making that a priority with your kids, with your students, you didn't say this in your introduction, I don't think, but I'll say it for you. You're in your first year at a new school.
Absolutely.
With a really long history of great choral music.
Absolutely.
How are you affecting what you do differently? Because every year is different, right? And the first year,
right,
as we both know, the first year is challenging. How are you sort of making that a priority? And what are you doing specifically, or what did you do this year to make a real priority to establishing great relationships with the kids and sort of setting a new tone?
You know what? The number one priority that I knew that I had to do was to get to know the kids. I wanted to get to know all the stakeholders in the program, the parents, administration. Just a side note, before I was a choir director, while I was getting my degree, I was also a server at a couple different restaurants. And I realized at that point, I knew that if I did not make a connection with my customers, if I did not find a way to get on their level, I wasn't going to make any money. And so I hate to kind of bring that with choral music, but I kind of took that from being a server into my career, in the sense that the first thing that I have to do is I have to get to know the kids. And with that, first get to know their names. I mean, that is one of the hardest things that we can do when, you know, we have 200 plus kids in your program. How in the heck am I going to get to know all these kids' names? But I think making that a priority was huge, you know, and so with the situations where a kid would walk in, I think that if they think that you are interested in what they're doing and genuinely invested in them, they'll go to bat for you. I told them that my job is not to come in here and to change things. My job is to get you to the point where you can achieve whatever you want to achieve musically when you leave me. And you know, I think that's one of the big things. So I think as teachers, when we get into a situation where we're new, if we tell kids that, listen, I'm not like the other guy, I'm not like your previous director, but I think like your previous director, I care about your musical growth. I want you to be able to achieve any type of goal that you have for yourself. I think letting them see that you're in their corner and that you're invested in them will really make things easier. And so that's kind of what I did. I will say that I went to football games, you know, the quintessential go to football games, go to basketball games, go to their drama performances. Let them see you outside of the choral classroom. Let them see you as just being a person who's really raising them. Because I think that's one thing that we forget. We have the opportunity to really be with kids if they remain in your program, if they remain at your school for 4 years and 4 formidable years. You know, and so it's so important that, I mean, I honestly feel like I have a stake in raising them. And so, yeah, it's been a great ride. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that things were great the whole entire time. It was never puppies and kittens 100% of the time. But I think in those situations where things got rough, I think taking it back to, hey, the reason why I'm doing these or the reason why I'm making these decisions is because I want you to be able to achieve your greatest potential in music. I'm very much looking forward to this upcoming year. You know, the way that I was, you know, I don't know about you, but whenever I'm thinking about school, I start to get into those mindsets to where, okay, here's what I'm going to say. And so for me, my first year was kind of like kindergarten. You know, it's not first grade. It's kind of that year that I needed to kind of prepare, getting me the basic knowledge that I need. And so this upcoming year, I really feel like is the first year that I'm actually about to be at my new position. The kids are amazing. And regardless of where you are, whether you're in a small suburb in Austin or you're in a major urban area in Houston, kids are kids. Kids are kids, humans. They want to be believed in. They want to know that you are there. They want to know that that they can trust you, you know? And I think that is those are one of the main things that I wanted to impress upon. Yeah.
So I love, well, first of all, I want to tell anybody watching this that, like, this isn't like a staged interview with Spencer Wiley and Cody Parrott. Like, we literally sit at each other's houses sometimes and, like, talk for 20 minutes at each other about, like, I don't know how many times I've preached a sermon to him about music literacy or, like, that damn dotted eighth note rhythm. So
where did that come from? No, just kidding.
Okay,
we love you.
I don't want anyone watching this to be like, are they staging? Right. Is there a script? There ain't no script.
No script. No script here.
So, I love, you know, I'm in my first year at a new school as well. And this is my first year. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's certainly taught me some things. And one of those things is that you can't come in with torches and grenades and start burning the whole place and pretending like you know more than all the kids and this and that, because the kids turn off everything that they ever had invested in the program. You'll go into a program that's really successful and those seniors will hate you. And we all know that the seniors don't matter. Because your focus really should be on the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors that are going to be the next year and the next years after that. But you've got to have the buy-in of the oldest kids. And if you come in with a torch and burn the whole choir room down and change everything and take away their trip, you're not doing any service for the older kids in the program. And the older kids are the ones that trickle down the student leadership. That's a lesson I had to learn, that the first year is a buffer, sort of.
Right.
Right? And that you get a couple of passes for some bad vowels or whatever, you know. Of course we all want to go to UIL and we all want to do well at UIL. But again, I that's never been the focus of my teaching, and I know it's never been the focus of your teaching. To talk to people about that, you know, it's really funny that I think people think it's a staged thing to say when people say, "Oh, well, UIL is not important to me," and I'll be the first person to tell you, I sometimes wish we didn't have to go to UIL.
Did you hear what he just said, everybody?
I hope that the UIL folks are listening, because that would make me famous on TikTok. I really don't think. Sometimes this year especially, I'm really glad we didn't have to go, because I know that my kids would not have performed as well as they wanted to.
You know, UIL is really just a snapshot. And really and truly, and I hate for that to sound cliche, but it really truly is. I think many choir directors tell their kids that, but that's something that we also have to truly believe as choir directors. It really is a snapshot. It's just the perspective of 6 people who don't know anything about you, anything about your program, and they're just getting an opportunity to see you for 15 minutes. That's not a good representation of 8 months of work.
And to further prove that point, I'm just going to say 2 words: freshman boys. Any seasoned teacher better comment on this video and tell the truth that we are preaching the truth of God's word. That if there is no further proof in the world to that fact, it's that it's freshman boys, a freshman group of boys, not girls. Girls are different. Boys. If you've ever taken a freshman group of boys to UIL Contest, you better comment under this video and say they telling the truth, because it's true.
It is true. It is true. It is true. But yeah, it's kind of one of those things, man. I think that if we really just look at what we're doing in the long term, what are we giving to these kids? We're giving them a place to belong. I think that, my job isn't here necessarily to talk about recruiting, but I think that, the best recruiting you could do is to show them that they can belong. So many kids at this stage in life, they just want to belong to something aside from, looking at the cell phone or they want to belong to something, and so I think that if we could provide these kids with a community, if we could provide them with some support, and then with that, through that, then give them a musical outlet, that's the best way to recruit, folks. Yes, a trip is great. Love an out-of-state trip. New York City is great. Disney is great. But you try to sell kids community, you try to sell kids family, you sell kids support, they will go to bat for you. And I think that is the number one thing, that if you focus on relationships and if you focus on community, the music will come, and honestly, like I said, that's just how I structure my program here at Harker Heights. That's how I structure my program at Leander. The numbers are great. It's nothing like 400 or 500 kids, but the kids that I do have love being there, and they invite their friends to be there. And so, and it all just starts with community.
I think there's nothing in the world that, they always say that imitation is what's the saying? Imitation is the finest form of flattery. Is the greatest form of flattery.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's nothing that's more indicative of a great choir program than kids that will bring their friends in and say, "Hey, Spencer wants to be in choir. Which group could he be in?" And there's nothing in the world that makes me happier than that. So while we're on this subject, so we already talked about establishing great relationships with kids and loving and caring and being sensitive to their needs and all of that, and also showing them a sense of community. How do you balance what that means to a teenager? All right, so put your brain in a teenager's place for just a second.
Oh God, no! I don't want to go back. No.
How do you balance that with excellent teaching and excellent music making? Because eventually they have to be able to deliver a standard of what we need to be. What we have to do is a superior rating.
I think it all goes back to letting the kids know that you're genuinely interested in their growth as a person and as a musician. If they understand that everything that you ask them to do, they know that it's going to make them better. I think one of the biggest things that I learned with regards to keeping kids motivated to want to learn is to set attainable but observable goals. Now, that's attainable in what you think it is, not what they think it is. And I think kind of the big thing. I think that if kids see and they have those attainable, observable goals, then when it doesn't happen, okay, can you hear how that was not exactly in tune? Yes? No? Okay, well, then let's do it again. And again, making sure that those goals are attainable. I'm a huge planner. Shout out Denise Eaton. Rehearsal plans are so super important. I do a lot of score study. I do a lot of forethought to make sure that everything that I ask my kids to do, I know that they'll be able to do it within the time allotted. And I also post my rehearsal plan for my kids. They get to see exactly what we're working on, not necessarily measure to measure, but specific things. Like, okay, from measure 71 to measure 85, what we're working for right now is a beautiful tone and in-tune singing. And so we will work that spot, and then I will ask them, did we achieve bullet point number 1? Were we singing in tune, and was it with a beautiful tone? Well, I don't know. No, if there's any hesitation, then we must do it again. You know what I'm saying? And so I think the toughness, it's not necessarily being mean, it's holding those kids to a standard and letting those kids know what that standard is. You know, I'm not being mean by asking you to do this again. I'm doing this so that you can achieve your goal, right? Because you want to be an amazing musician, right? Mm-hmm.
It's
exactly.
quite the opposite.
Exactly.
You're not being mean. You're actually loving them as much as they can be loved, you know? And once they understand that it's not coming from a sense of oh God, here we go again.
Right.
It's then they start to buy in. There's something to be said for teenagers, and they want to do two things. They want to please whoever they respect, but they also want to push the limit of that person's, I don't know what the word is, like that person's patience, or so kids will push you and they'll do the minimum that they can do to meet your standards. So I think as choir teachers, our standards have to be really high, because the kids will try as little as possible to meet that standard. So you have to set that standard really high. If you don't verbalize it or you don't vocalize it to them all the time, they won't meet it, and they won't know what they're trying to aim for. So then you just have expectations of them that they have no idea how to meet. If they don't know what the standards are, then they're not going to meet them.
Well, the kids want to be successful. And I think and just like you were saying, that's the end all be all. We're in the time of the download, right? And one of the jokes I always tell my kids, you can't download sight reading, yo. You can't download good tone. It don't work like that. You got to do it the old-fashioned way, the way everybody been doing it for thousands of years, and you got to put in the time. I think that once kids realize that the beauty is in the reps. Reps are one of the things, and I bring up Denise Eaton. The only reason why I bring her up is because I had the opportunity to work with her this past year. She says, reps are my friend, and it's a mantra that I kind of adopted for the kids. It's not to be mean. I'm just giving you an opportunity so that you don't need me to tell you, yes, no, that was right. Doing it over and over and over again, you start to figure out what those standards are. And the longer that you're in the program, the easier those things are going to kind of get. I think finding ways to make kids individually responsible for learning and singing is also something that can be a little uncomfortable. I'm not even going to lie. I'm going to be honest with you. I started out as one of those choir directors like, oh no, let's not have our babies sing by themselves. Oh, we don't want to make them uncomfortable. But yet and still we ask them to audition for TMEA. We ask them to audition for solo and ensemble. And so I think that's a lot of where that performance anxiety kind of comes from. If they're not giving that opportunity to express themselves individually, frequently, it really makes things uncomfortable, whether that be in sections, whether that be rows, whether that be quartets, if you want to go for that. I think that especially when you're dealing with these larger ensembles, kids can get lost. Yeah, and so I think that if they know that, oh my gosh, and there's a possibility that he's probably going to ask me to do it for him in kind of a smaller ensemble, I got to have my crap together,
I think you're absolutely right. And I'm going to back you up a little bit to what you said about being comfortable. so many teachers that I've heard, especially folks that work with younger kids. There's a special place in heaven for people who teach middle school choir well. There's
wow.
Like, there is a special place next to God for these people, because I couldn't do it, and there's no way.
Right.
I don't even like the freshmen. I think there's I'm gonna say a quote that I'm probably gonna mess up. Growth happens at the edge of the comfort zone, or at the edge of the comfort zone is where the most growth happens, or something like that. You know, that edge is where we achieve things that our bodies are capable of doing that we didn't know that they were. When I was in graduate school, I had 3 jobs, as well as going to school full time as a grad student, doing all this stuff to sort of further my career, banging myself to death, you know, with 3 or 4 hours of sleep every night to get everything done. I feel like that's when I made the most growth, both vocally and from an educator standpoint. I really learned a lot about the voice, and I learned a lot about what we can do as humans and what we can achieve. So if you aren't pushing your kids past their comfort zone, I don't think you're getting the fullest result that you could get from them. Maybe they might be good enough, and that's okay. But I want to make a huge poster and put it up in my room and just write good enough with one of those big Ghostbuster slashes. There's no such thing as good enough. And I do the same thing, like you were saying. They'll sing a phrase, and I point out one at a time. Hey, Trish, tell me about that. And in Spring ISD, part of our evaluation standards, or whatever you want to call, is one of them is something about no opt out. Like we're not supposed to allow the kids to say I don't know, or
none of that. I like that.
So one of the strategies that we use, that we've been taught to use in Spring, is to say, well, why don't you ask Danny right next to you and see what he thinks? Or you ask another person in the choir, Spencer, what did you think? And if he says, whatever you're working on, then you go back to the first student and ask them to sort of repeat it back. So that it sort of like underlines that A, what you're looking for is a standard that we're still going to try and achieve. And B, it's okay that you don't know right now, but you knowing is not acceptable anymore. I think the kids respect it a lot when you don't let them suck.
You know what though, man? I think we've all been, every single last one of us choir directors have been in those uncomfortable choir rehearsals, you know, as a student. You know, we've been there, you know, and we've been, like you said, going through your undergrad and having A, B, C, all the way to Z to do in 3 hours. And there's something to be said about those uncomfortable environments. That is where we thrive. But, you know, I think on the flip side, the balance is when those times do get really, really tough, we got to make sure that, A, we have the kids' number one priority in mind, making sure that we're making community, making sure that we're achieving those standards, but also making sure that we are creating an environment that we would also want to be a part of. But that's why we get paid the big bucks, right? Hey, that's
Oh yeah, big old bucks, 1 or 2 of them at a time.
One day when I'm old and retired and nobody can fire me for this, I'm gonna write a book, and it's gonna be called "Choir Students Are Dogs," because like dogs can do amazing things, right? Like you've seen dog shows, and they can do backflips, and like they can talk and stuff, and it's like if they're trained well, you know. And our little babies are like way more intellectually on a much higher level than a dog, right? Ideally, but like they, you know, it goes to the same standards of practice where there's consistency and care and a community. They seem to develop skills that are kind of way beyond what you would expect that they can develop. So I guess you said it first, but I want to touch on it. You are a giant muscle man, and like you're tall, you're a big black guy, you got a low voice, and when you walk in a classroom, everybody goes like, who's that, right? And so you have this effect on kids to make them sort of go, yes. What would your advice be to a younger teacher Because you were this size when you were 24 or 22 or whatever. I don't know that you've ever had that struggle with classroom management, and maybe you have. But what would your advice be for a younger student, maybe a man that's a little bit on the meek side, or a small framed woman, or a tall woman, or a small guy? Like, I mean, I'm a small guy.
Think that young men respond well to me because they don't know how to take me. You know, like they see this guy, he gets up in front of them, you know, this big old dude who looks like a coach, and then here he is singing in falsetto, or you know, talking about sensitivity of a phrase and so on and so forth. And so everybody has strengths. You know, everybody has certain things that they bring to the table. I will tell you this: doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter what color of your skin, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter what your sexual preference is, as long as you have a plan. You step in front of them with an expertise. You step in front of them with a knowledge beyond what they know. You step in front of them with knowledge about the score. You step in front of them with love. It doesn't matter what you look like. Now, I will say this. Yes, on first glimpse, first impressions physically, that just happens to be something that I was blessed with. But at the end of the day, what I found is that if I don't have something deeper than that, after 5 minutes, I will lose a class. And so I really think it all boils down to, how do you manage your classroom? How much preparation have you done beforehand? You know, do you know when kids are walking into the room, how they're going to walk in? Do you know what you want your rehearsals to look like? Do you know how you want them to leave? You know, and just like we were saying, I mean, I don't know if you edited this in here, but we were talking about how choir students are very, very similar to that of young puppies, you know, and just like with young puppies, you have to give them structure. You have to give them a treat. You know, you have to make it an enjoyable environment for them. But I think that you're in charge. And I think, I mean, we've seen tons of choir directors, short of stature, gender, sexual preference, can step in front of all state choirs or any type of ensemble and still command respect, the same amount of respect that a 250-pound big dude can do, you know? And so I think it goes, so for all of you folks who are out there saying, oh my gosh, I'm this, I'm that, I don't look like this, I don't sound like this person, that does not matter. What are you doing to plan? As long as you're the expert in the room, they will follow.
Love that you brought it to preparation, because so many young people don't understand the connection. I'm not saying this as a person that's like been teaching for 12 years and thinks he knows everything, because that's not true. I'm saying this as a person who got his butt kicked by a bunch of teenagers multiple times in my career, because yes, they're smart. Are they smarter than you? No. Yes, they are good at music. Some of them are better than I was when I was their age. Are they better than me now? No. But you have to go into the room being the person that knows the most about the music that you're teaching in that moment. So if you only prepared that 8 bars, don't try to teach something else because you only prepared that 8 bars, and you're going to show your butt.
Because we all know kids are also like sharks, and they will smell blood in the water, you know? And so I think that, I think it just goes along with you just being secure in the musician that you are, being knowledgeable about the music that you're teaching, and have a plan as to how you are going to manage every single second of that rehearsal. And when you do that, things will go well.
But you're absolutely right. In a classroom, it doesn't matter the color of their skin. It doesn't matter necessarily the amount of money that they have on their checking card, or that mom and dad has 2 jobs, or what. That doesn't matter when it comes into a choral music classroom. Now, there are certain limitations for those things that we can discuss in another episode,
right?
Which is on my mind. I have another episode that's slated for that specifically, and it's going to be awesome. But
I can't wait to watch it.
There's going to be there's a certain aspect of your teaching that has to be prepared. You have to know the kids. You have to have a good relationship with them, and you have to understand their community. You have to understand where they're coming from. But ultimately, when it all boils down to it, you've got to be ready to teach 8 bars of Brahms, and you've got to know how you're going to do that. And if you don't make a plan to do that, you're going to lose everything else that matters to you as a teacher. the classroom management,
Absolutely.
relationship with the kids. They're going to lose respect for you because you're wasting their time. And
Yep.
and then they're going to start acting out after.
And there's problems.
And that, as they say, turns into a snowball of bad words.
Right. Right. We all know the word, right?
And as it gets down the mountain, you let one or two rehearsals like that happen, and yikes, you know?
Right.
Like, yikes. It's scary, and we've all been in a situation where we've watched a new teacher or even an experienced teacher drown in a classroom where they weren't prepared. And I've been there. I'm going to say this to the whole world listening. If America, if you're listening, I've been there. I've done it. I did it this year. This was my 12th year teaching high school, and I've done it. All right. I did it this year because maybe you went out with your friends the night before. Maybe you maybe you gave them a piece of music that wasn't really appropriately chosen. And there's another section for that as well. But I'm not plugging all my stuff, but shamelessly plug.
Please plug your stuff.
I am going to do a great episode on selection of repertoire, and you guys are going to gag. It all layers together, and I wish that younger teachers they're so energetic, and you guys are so beautiful, and I love you guys, and we wouldn't have a career were it not for young teachers coming into this industry. You have to understand that everything is connected, from the way you dress to the way you talk to kids, the way your classroom is organized, what your room looks like. Are you playing the piano? Can you play the piano? She's preaching, but you know, they're all tied together. Everything is tied together, and it ultimately comes back to, at the top of that rope is how much you prepared for each class.
Amen.
Important point that I'm going to make, and another shameless plug, is that, and you can speak on this for a little while, but then we're going to move on to something else. You cannot plan a lesson if you haven't studied the score, if you don't know the music. And I don't mean hear it and go, oh, that's Mendelssohn, blah, blah, blah. I mean, know every single part, every single note, every single word. And you cannot teach it to kids until you can sing and play or reproduce in some way every single part, every single word, every single note. You can't do it. Yeah. And I'll add one more layer to this, and I think Denise Eaton will clap and sing my praises if I say this, which is my ultimate goal in life, right? If you can't do it from memory, right? This is where Dr. Betsy Weber and I have connected on several things, and she will tell you straight up, sing the trombone part for measure 42, and she'll just look at you. If you're preparing the Vivaldi Gloria and you don't know the trumpet part, how are you going to bring him in measure whatever of the first movement? How are you going to know he's playing wrong notes if you don't know his part? And I'll say this as a person, I can brag about myself a little bit. I'm a really good reader. I can look at, give me 2 seconds and I can read whatever you hand me. Not on the piano, with my voice.
Right, not on the piano. Not on the piano.
Piano, no thanks. And thank God for like my background as far as it goes back, and the church jobs I've had that taught me how to read music. But that's not good enough. Reading it is not what she wants. And Betsy, if you're out there, say something to me, because, or you can tell me to shut up and stop saying your name. It's absolutely true. If you don't have every part memorized, and I hate to be the person that says that, but I've watched too many young people try to teach a piece of music that they'll say, well, it's just 2-part soprano alto. I don't really have to work that hard to prepare that score. Oh, really? Why didn't you know the alto section was singing the wrong notes for the last 6 measures? And if you don't spend that time, Spencer Wiley, if you don't spend that time, don't stand up in front of a group of kids and try to teach it to them, because they'll eat you alive. And here we are back at full circle, back to sharks eating you in the classroom.
Blood in the water, exactly. Blood in the water.
I know in your school you teach a very transient population, and Killeen is a military school district. Correct me on the numbers, but when I taught there, half the population that I taught was military, and many were very transient and would move schools. They'll go from one school in the district to another, or they'll spend a year at one school, and then their families will get a PCS order, a change of station, to a different base where they'll be positioned in Germany or Tennessee. Or I know that I teach in a district that's very transient as well for a different reason. Many of the part of my zone that I teach in is apartment homes. So there are brick and mortar homes, but there's a lot of rental property in my school district. Because of the nature of the beast, we get kids that are in a 1-year lease or a 2-year lease, and then they move because they found a cheaper apartment or they decided to move in with whatever. So we have a lot of transients in our district as well. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how you sort of see yourself addressing that in your district, or any experience that you might have to it, if there is anything that you do differently.
Folks, love your counselors, get to know your counselors, make sure that they understand the prerequisite skills and the requisite skills that you need and that you want for each of your ensembles. Know their birthdays, know what their favorite fast food, know what their favorite candy is, because the counselors and every seasoned and experienced teacher know this, will make or break the program.
Huge. Young teachers, hear me. Hear the words coming out of my face. You've got to get to know the people on your campus. The principal secretary runs the school. If you don't know any of the other counselors and you can't keep track of their names, at my school, I think there's 8. Don't learn them. Learn the head counselor first and go talk to them every other day. Go talk to them. Just go to their room and ask them how they're doing. If they're busy, walk away. Don't interrupt them. And bring them some chocolate, or bring them, like, you're gonna find out what they like, and you're gonna use it as a manipulative tool, because there is nothing in the world that is more dangerous to a choir or a band or orchestra program than counselors who either don't know or don't care about the standards of the program. And everybody can complain about counselors all day long. Every choir director could probably be like, oh, our counselors, right? I think more often than not, 99% of the time, it comes from ignorance. They don't know what a treble choir is. They don't know. They don't know what bella voce means. Stop calling your ensembles that. You have to do something that makes sense to the people who don't know anything about music. They don't know anything about singing. And if they are a musician, or they were in a fine arts class, or they were a dance teacher someday, great. Use that as a tool, but don't assume that all 10 of them at your 6A high school know what a tenor bass choir is. Don't go to them when something's wrong. Go to them before something is wrong. Introduce yourself, make a connection, just like you do with students.
So, like I told you, I'm from this area, and my dad was in the military. And so I have a perspective on both ends of the spectrum. I remember my 6th grade year, I was at Coppers Cove Junior High. And then I went over to Manor Middle School, then went over to Fairway Middle School, and then went back to Coppers Cove Junior High, all within the span of 2.5, 3 years. And so I'm very, very familiar with how weird that is as a student. So from that, I think that I've always kind of been cognizant of making sure that when we do have new students, that we try to make them feel as welcome as possible, as quickly as possible. You can maybe talk to the previous director, kind of get a base knowledge of kind of what things that they've done. But the big thing is trying to get to know them as soon as possible. You also want to try to get them plugged into the choir culture as soon as possible. So it's not just figuring out their musical ability, but it's also making them feel as quickly as part of the family as you possibly can, So I call it a choir council, and within that I have a choir representative. And so my students know that whenever we have a new student, they're responsible for showing them, getting in their binder, making sure that they introduce them the section leader, so on and so forth, but just making sure that just to plug them into the culture, because that's the thing. As a transient student myself, it was always so hard to try to feel like I was part of something that's already been going before I got there. And then after they're a part of the program and after you're used to them, try to get them in that individual situation as quickly as possible. Obviously, you want to, because you've been with them for a week or two, you kind of be able to gauge what their musical ability is. Try to see if you can see what they are as an individual, with regards to their reading skills, with regards to their range. And that will, again, give you an opportunity to get to know them as a person. So before this, they've seen you as the guy who's just conducting in the front of the class. But, after they've gotten to know their peers more, try to see if you can get an opportunity to where they can get to know you more and you can get to know them a little bit more. And then again, it doesn't have to be long, 3 to 5 minutes. Hey, come on in. Would you mind seeing this stuff I've been working on for the past couple of weeks? How are you with sight reading? Does this weird you out? Do you feel comfortable? I think, again, it all goes back to getting to know the student and meeting them where they're at. And so you kind of have to have a policy in place for how you are going to, if you're not going to place kids in your entry level class. Like for me, I will just go ahead and put this out there. How I structure things is if I have a new kid who's coming to my choir program, my counselors know that they automatically get placed in our level 1 choir. And of course, those are separated by gender. That's what I tell my counselors. This is where they go. But when a parent reaches out to me, I will say, okay, well, this is our policy. Normally, this is how we do things. However, if you want the opportunity to be placed in a more advanced ensemble, I personally have in-person audition, or I will do a video audition. A lot of times I will make that audition material be centered around the same type of things that the kids who were in that upper level ensemble had to do in order to get in it the year prior. That's a real good litmus. If you tell a kid that they have to audition for you and you give them, you tell them, I want a prepared solo, I want you to sight read this 8-measure bar, that will really be a telltale sign for whether or not they need to be placed in that upper level ensemble, But I can honestly tell you, out of all the years that I've been teaching, I can count on my right hand the amount of times that I actually had a kid who could be in that top varsity ensemble. It's not just because you did varsity with this choir teacher in this state or this school doesn't mean you could be varsity in Mr. Wiley's class. And so a lot of it is not only learning what they can do, but they have to learn how I rehearse. So yes, you do have this requisite skill and I really appreciate it, but you also have to spend the time to get to know how I rehearse, because that's one thing that you don't know.
Yeah, the transience is very difficult to deal with, but I will say in a really simple, trying to be 1 or 2 sentences kind of explanation, I'll say, do the same thing you do every day. And just make sure that you're treating that student with a little bit more love and care. And
Absolutely.
A stupid little thing you can do right off the bat that will make their day. Give them a choir t-shirt.
Yes. Give them a treat.
The first day, give them a treat. Make sure if you're like Spencer, where you have officers that are in charge of that in each class, make sure that officer understands that that's part of their package. They get a folder, they get their music, they get a freaking choir t-shirt. And don't worry about the money. You've got the money.
Right.
You paid for t-shirts already.
Right.
And give them a stupid pencil. Give them a pencil and a t-shirt. And tell them where to sit. Or in my class, stand. Because
mine too. Yeah. Listen, choir puppies. I feel like that should be maybe like the subject of this whole thing. Choir puppies. Give them a treat.
So this is sort of like one of the big ones that I really wanted to hit on, because I've seen you teach and it's something that I learned from you and I've learned from a few people, but like I think you do it better than anybody. You have a way of celebrating with your ensembles that is so cool, and like it makes them feel like they just won the Olympics. So I want you to talk to me about celebrations. And I call them celebrations because when I was in band in high school, we used to call it celebrating whenever unfortunately, like most people do, like push-ups, but whatever. Talk to me about what that means and sort of what the terminology is, first of all, and how you use it as a tool in your classroom.
So, we have a lot of expectations for our kids, man. We expect them to do a lot of stuff. How many times do we ask them to rep a certain phrase over and over and over and over and over and over and over again? And so it's so super important that whenever you have those moments of success, that you have to accentuate those things. You really, just as hard as you expect excellence, you also have to have when you have those successful times, you have to really make sure that those are just as big. I mean, I will literally, there's been times, not now, I'm getting old now, but there's been times that I've done literal backflip, middle school, again, just because I was so excited about the fact that these kids did something that they were not able to do minutes before that. Okay. Now hear me. I'm not saying that you need to do, run around and do flips and swing from the rafters or anything like that. But I definitely think you make a big deal out of anything that they do well. Now within reason, right? I mean, you definitely don't want to pray, oh, you sang a great, you sang the first 8 measures, awesome job. Well, yes, you give them that.
Let me stop you because I want to go back to what you just said, and I want to translate it for people, and I want y'all to hear it, and I want you to not think that I'm a mean person by saying this, because you can ask Denise Eaton and she'll tell you the same words. Don't celebrate it if it's not what you want.
Oh my gosh.
Don't stop them and say, that was good, when it sounded like frying pans falling down a stairway. Don't do it, because that will give them the wrong impression about what you want. Then you're confusing the poor little puppy.
Right. Well, and a lot of times they know that it wasn't right. So if you say good job, oh my gosh, it's just like you said, you've lost trust.
We are back at sharks smelling blood in water.
Blood in the water.
Keep the blood out of the water.
Yeah, so I mean, it's super important. And so those celebrations can be a high five, heck yeah. Like, I've done things that I've like yelled, yes, yes. And they're looking at me like, looking at me like I'm crazy. But I want them to know that I'm just as emphatic when they do something well, really, really well, as if they do something really, really bad. I'm going to everybody can get it, whether it's a positive thing or a negative thing. So super important that you show them those extremes, Those celebrations aren't just necessarily after the rehearsal. It could also be parties, social events. It's so important that, like I said, we're not just selling music, we're also selling community. And those times when kids have those opportunities to celebrate successes together, it's so important. Those moments, maybe you could structure those celebrations after UIL. I know a lot of people choose to do their spring trips after they do UIL or those type of things. Or, if you have like a winter concert, one of the things that we do at my school is we do a winter feast, where all we do at the end of the semester, we just get together and we just eat. A lot of people are thinking that these celebrations and these social events need to be expensive, or we need to go on the spring trip, or we need to go to New York. No, really and truly, like I said, if we're just trying to sell community, well, let's get the community together, and you'd be surprised about just putting on, getting a movie night, or a dodgeball. Dodgeball, folks, dodgeball, amazing. It's amazing. That's all you need. It's just an opportunity for kids just to let their hair down and to really just celebrate all the hard work that they've done, because God knows we asked them to do so much. We were talking about earlier, pushing them past that comfort zone and pushing them further than what they could ever think that they could do. That's hard for them. And so you've got to make sure that you take time to really celebrate those things together, and I just think that celebrations, social events, are super, 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 super important. They have to be. We expect too much of the kids to not give them that outlet and that release.
That last sentence that you just said is so huge, and I swear to God, like Facebook or whoever's watching, if you're probably not watching anymore because this thing is too long. It's so important to understand that what you are asking these children to do at 14 years old or even 18 years old is enormous. You're asking them to blend their sound into Suzanne's behind her, and she's so loud. And you're asking them to watch the conductor while they're memorizing words and vowel shapes and tuning with everybody else in the choir. And you're asking them to not only do that, but like do it on time, which no one can do on time. I'm a tenor. I'm late to everything. And, we're asking them for so much. And if you're not giving them anything back, then like, yikes, and it like you said, like, I love that you said that. It doesn't have to be a trip to Spain. It can be literally like hire a DJ in the choir room and move the risers and let them have a dance party, you know,
Yep.
after school.
Karaoke's fun for kids. It's easy. YouTube, it's already there. You literally just have the kids get a microphone, shine the words up on the screen. It's done. It's a karaoke party.
You know what's really funny is I'm going to add this to you because a few years ago I was at a school where our pop show was at the beginning of the year, and because in the calendar it wouldn't fit any other way. So we did it at the very beginning of the year, and it was like first week of school, auditions for the show are in 2 weeks. Like third week of school, freshman boy named John or whatever is like, wait, what? And so what I would do with the younger classes in order to get them to sort of buy into it, I would assign them all a song to sing or a song to sing as a group. They could pick a song, or they could pick a group, and they would sing it. What they would do is I would make them sing it. If they did it by themselves, great. They get extra credit. Okay. Because you want to encourage them to do that. Right. And then like, if they did it in a group, fine. Three of them together, they all sing, I Want It That Way. And it's only this much of the song. Right.
Right.
One, it gives me an impression of what they sound like by themselves without the high pressure of an audition. That this is a great way. And it gave me a really great impression of all their voices really, really quickly with something they liked to sing. And you just use a karaoke track and like, or having like a karaoke party, like you're saying at the very beginning of the year. Oh my gosh, they're scared to sing. And then they actually get up and do it and they feel like $1 million, one. And it gives you an impression of how they sound. Like you get to hear their voices by themselves.
No, celebrations are important. Social events are important. I mean, again, I'll take it back to we're in the business of people. Now, let's be honest. As choir directors, we don't necessarily want to do them because we've been working all day and so on and so forth. But I think the investment that you put into spending time and doing those things, you'll get a huge, huge payoff. Huge, huge payoff.
Yeah, I'm super guilty. I'll admit this to everybody who knows me. I'm super guilty of not wanting to do all the fun stuff because to me, it's not fun.
Right. Of course not.
My idea of fun is very different than a 14-year-old.
Right.
And it should be. If you're in that situation, I feel you. I'm like that. So I have officers that are in charge of that stuff. And I don't think there's anything groundbreaking about making that statement. Nobody out there is going, oh my God, wow. But like, it's nice to hear it out loud. Like put your kids in charge of that stuff because they aren't a 38-year-old man or a 45-year-old woman. One, for me, if it doesn't go well, then I can be like, well, you guys planned it. So
let's do a plus delta. What can we do next time to change it?
Exactly. I always, what do you think about next time? I love the moments about celebrating in class. And I know you said that while we were talking, but don't wait until the fall concert to play it back and then let them hear it the first time. Stop in class the first week. Let them see, wow, you guys just sang Do up to Ray and we were struggling with that. And now you do it and it sounds great. Let's do it one more time. And I do it all the time with kids. Like while we're teaching, I'll stop and act like something went wrong. Stop! No! And I'll be like, that was awesome. Like, because they're expecting you to be like, no, that was wrong. But they get this endorphin rush of, I just did that amazing. And he was so crazy. And then they get really frustrated with it. They get irritated. And they're like, well, then why'd you stop us?
Right. But again, it's that constant they need to be validated. And anything that you can do to push them forward, I'm asking a lot of you, but you are doing it. Awesome job. Whatever that looks like for you, whether it be a backflip, whether it be a stop, whatever works with your personality, do something that just use those few times when they do something really, really awesome to just make it just an extreme thing. You know, I mean, how many times do we make complete fools of ourselves in front of our choir? So many times. I tell my kids, I'm the coolest person in this room. I don't care who you are. I got mine together, and I can sit up here and act a fool of myself because I'm cooler than every single last one of y'all. I feel like with choir puppies, man. I don't know why choir puppies are just resonating in my head right now, but it's behavior. Right now, I was just telling Cody that I just got a new puppy, and I'm training him. He's a 2-year-old, rescue dog or so on and so forth, and so you know, you got to make sure that you give them structure, but when they do something well, give them a treat. You know, really, really, really praise them, because that's going to be for those kids who are not intrinsically motivated by themselves to really want to continue. Those moments will really, really keep them going and really keep them on your team.
It's really important to know how they take reward and how they take celebration. These kids watch TikTok videos or Vine videos that are 10 seconds long, and they get that's the kind of excitement that they get. So if you're in the library of celebrating with your kids every 7 weeks when they do a concert, that's not enough for this generation. They need more stimulus from you, because they need constant affirmation. Like, you have to continue to layer in the positive affirmation, because again, most high school students and most middle school students are not intrinsically motivated. You'll have maybe the top 3% of the students you teach in your entire life that motivate themselves. You will be able to identify those students in your classroom in the first week of teaching.
Yep.
The first time you say, "Who wants to help me pass these books out?" Those five hands that go up, those are your girls for the rest of the year. Even at the best school in the world, they're not.
Kids are kids.
I just love the way, like, I think I've had you come and clinic one of my groups when I was in the other room working with a different group, and I heard you screaming at them, like, doing one of your huge celebrations. And I just, like, remember because you're ridiculous is what you are.
But understand that we are dealing in the business of people, and people want to enjoy themselves, whether that be socially or how they make their music. They want to enjoy themselves. They don't want to suck, just like you said. You know?
They don't want to suck.
It's really, really nice to be able to talk shop with somebody, especially right now, you know, because we're all just looking for answers, and it's really cool that you're doing this, man. We just talking. You, like I said, you have your work cut out for you, man, and I'm just really interested to get to watch this. I'm really interested in all these new topics and subjects that these guests that you're going to be bringing in, man. This is super cool, man, and I can't thank you enough for asking me to be your guinea pig on something like this. And good luck to you on this whole thing.
Thank you so much for joining us on this first episode. If you liked what you saw or you're interested in the subjects we're talking about, please subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us on our first episode. If you liked what you saw or you think you'll enjoy hearing more, please subscribe to our channel. I promise there's plenty of great content coming. See you soon.